Hello and welcome to a tutorial on creating recalls and appointment reminders. So to get to the recalls area, we'll click on Documents on the left hand side of the screen, and then you can see we can access both create appointment reminders and create recalls from this area. So let's first of all go to the create recalls. Now there are two ways of generating recalls. You can either do it manually or you can have the program do it automatically. We suggest that you allow the program to handle it all, and we'll come on to that a bit later. But there may be times when you want to create recalls manually. And doing so is fairly simple. When a dentist sees a patient at the end of the session, it will ask the dentist whether they want to update the recall date. That's the next time the person needs to come into the practice. Now, as long as they're doing that, then anyone that is due their recall will appear in our list here. So you can see we've got a date range. It always just goes for the next month ahead, so we can see that within the next month we just have these 3 people that are due to be recalled. But it may be that you haven't run recalls for quite some time, and there are patients that haven't been in for maybe over a year. So in order to find those individuals and to send them a text or an email or a letter, you can simply change the start date at the top here and maybe go back as far as you want to. So if we went back over a year, for example, then we would see individuals that haven't been in for that length of time. They haven't had an appointment booked during that time. So this is a good way of making sure that nobody is missed and that we can keep tabs on everybody at the practice. So once we have our list of patients, we can either select them as a letter and send them a letter, or we can send them an email by selecting emails down the bottom, or we can select all SMS. Notice that on the left hand side here we have some boxes that are in pink and others that are in a green. The pink basically means that you don't have consent from that patient to send them a particular type of correspondence. So in this instance we can see that Jamie Williams, although he's given consent to receive emails and SMS, he doesn't want to receive any letters. And this is the same with Ruth. She hasn't given consent to receive emails. So generally, if we select preferred, what the program will do is it will look through your preferred method of correspondence. So it may be that you've set your practice to want to send out emails first, and then to send SMSs next, and then letters finally. So what the program will do is it will first of all go through and it will select any people that have emails first, and then if they don't have an email address it will send them a text, and then if they don't have a text it will send a letter. And that's basically what we can see here. We can see that individuals that have an email address and have given permission to be able to send an email, those ones are ticked. But anybody that hasn't given permission for an email, you can see it's automatically defaulted to sending an SMS. In the instance down here we can see this person doesn't have an email address or a mobile number, so it's chosen to send a letter, which was our third correspondence choice. Now what format are the recalls? Well, our email format is stored under the email options, our letter format under the letter options, and the SMSs under the SMS options. So if I go to my email options, this is the format of our email. So we've got some fields on the left hand side, and we can insert those fields into our emails by simply double clicking on them. So here, let's say for example I wrote the word dear and then I put a space, and I simply double click title and it will insert the title, and then I'm going to put a space between that, and then I'm going to insert the last name, and that will automatically insert the patient's details into our email. And you can see here it's been over 6 months since your last visit to the dental practice, and we ask you to contact us as soon as possible to arrange a visit with, and then we have the name of provider in our email. So that's for our email. For our letter options, these are set up in the internal word processor, so you might want to watch the tutorial on creating documents using the internal word processor. But you can see I've created a template that is called Recall1, and then I can just choose which document I want to send the patient, and again it will merge the patient's details into our letter. And then under the SMS options, very similar to the email, I've simply written out my SMS and just double clicked and inserted the fields into my SMS message. So that's one way of creating our recalls in a manual way. What about if we want the program to handle the recalls for us? Well, that's down the bottom here under Automate Recall Settings. So if I click on that, again we can see a very similar section here under Email, Letters and SMS. I can configure my emails to be exactly what I want them to be, which letters I want to send, and the SMS message that I want to send. Now notice we can send here up to 6 levels of recalls. Now what does this mean? It just means that if somebody does not respond to the first email or to the first SMS, it will automatically send them another email or SMS, and we can have different wording depending on which recall the program is sending. So I've chosen to have the same message in my email here, but if we want to, we can say, look, you didn't respond to our first email, therefore we'd like to encourage you please to contact the dental practice. So again, you can see that's emails 1 and 2. We can go on to 3 and 4, and again we can have a different email setup in our message 3, message 4, message 5, message 6. So we can basically recall the patient up to 6 times, which should of course be plenty. So we would set those up there. Again, with letters we can have different letter templates. Recall 1, and we might have a slightly different worded letter for recall 2, slightly different worded for letter 3, and then exactly the same thing for SMS. Once we've set up our emails and our SMS messages, then on the General tab we can see when we want to send the patient's recall in relation to their recall date. So you can see here it says specify when recalls will be sent in relation to the patient's next recall date. Positive numbers are before the date and negative numbers are days after the recall is due. A 0 setting will mean a recall will not be sent. So it may be that for our first recall we want to send a letter or a message to that patient in advance of their recall date. So notice it said that positive numbers are before the date. So if we want to send a message 7 days before their recall is due, we would simply put a 7 into our first recall box. So 7 days before anybody's recall is due, the program will search through all of our patients and it will automatically send a recall to that patient. Let's say the patient does not respond, they don't contact the practice, they don't make an appointment. Well, when do we want to send the second recall? Well, we might choose that maybe 2 weeks, a month after their recall was due, we want to send them another recall. So notice it said negative numbers are days after the recall is due. So if they don't respond to that first recall, we could put in here maybe minus 30. So 30 days after their recall was due, if they ignored the first recall, it will send a second recall. And then again, we could say, well, if they don't respond to that second recall, let's say another month after that, we'll put a minus 60. So another month after that, it will send them another recall. And we can send as many recalls as we like, up to 6, with those negative numbers in there, and just keep on recalling the patient until they respond. Once that's set up, on the right hand side here, we would tick the automate the creation of the recall. So if we do want the program to create it automatically, we simply tick the box, automate creation of recalls, and then we choose the time when we want the recalls to run. So here we've said 9:30 in the morning, everybody's in the practice, the program is running, so it will then send those recalls at that time. Whichever computer you're actually wanting to send the recalls from, that is the only computer that you would tick this next box on. Notice it says always use this PC to generate recalls, only one computer can be selected. So you don't want the recalls to be going out from different computers at different times. One computer, just choose which one and then click on that box, and then it will use just this one computer to send out the recalls. We can, if we want it to, prompt before generating recalls, and that will just simply generate a message on the screen that says, I'm about to generate your recalls, do you want to permit this? And then if we say yes, then the program will go ahead and create the recalls. If we say no, then it won't. If we don't want that prompt to appear, we just want the program to go ahead and create them anyway, we can always turn off that prompt. And then finally, do we want to see a list of results after generating the recalls? Which ones succeeded, which ones failed? Maybe because the patient hasn't given consent, for example, to send either letters or emails or SMS, in which case, of course, the program will not attempt to contact those people. So this generate a recall result will just give us an overview of anyone that might have been missed that we might need to contact manually. And that's really it for generating automatic recalls. Once we've done those, we can save and close our recalls there, and that's it. The program will now generate our recalls for us automatically. Very, very similar with the create appointment reminders. If we click on create appointment reminders here, exactly the same format. So we can see that we have a list of patients that are due to come in tomorrow. So it will always default to today and tomorrow. So these are the people that are due to come in tomorrow. We can see exactly the same. It's got green for individuals that have accepted to receive correspondence, and it's in a pink for people that haven't given correspondence, which we might need to contact manually by telephoning them. So again, we could do this every day, come into the program, see who's coming in tomorrow, and just simply create reminders. And again, it will use whatever we have under the email options, the letter options, and the SMS options to format that appointment reminder. So if I click on email options, very similar to our recalls, it will send out an email, an appointment reminder is the subject. And again, I've just inserted my fields into here, so you can see, dear first name, this is a reminder that your appointment on, and then I've inserted appointment day, date and time. Your appointment is due on at the dental practice. If you cannot make this appointment, please contact us. Again, we can put whatever we want into this email. It might be that you want to send multiple emails. You might want to send 2. Some practices like to inform their patient of their appointment maybe a week in advance and then send out another email the day before. And you can do that. So if you want to send another email, then just insert that into the second email box at the bottom here. Under the letter options, exactly the same as before. We just create our appointment reminder letter in our internal word processor, and then we can select it from our drop down. And again, if we want to send a second reminder, we can create our letter and create the second reminder as well. And again, exactly the same for the SMS options. So I'm here choosing to send the same format for both my first and my second SMS. And so it will generate 2 and send those to the patient at the appropriate times. Again, what if we want the program to automatically generate our appointment reminders for us? That's down the bottom here, automate reminder settings. So I can say automatically send my reminders, tick the box. I will create those reminders at, here I've chosen 9 o'clock in the morning. And my first reminder, let's say I want to send emails 7 days in advance, and I'll do exactly the same thing with my SMSs and exactly the same with my letters. So patient will receive an appointment reminder 7 days in whatever format they've chosen to be corresponded with. And if I choose to, I can send out a second one maybe a day before the appointment is due. Again, it's not necessary to do 2. Most practices will just set up 1, and they will normally just say, well, let's send out the day before the patient is due, let's send out our correspondence, and that they'll have this set to none so that they're not sending out a second one. But you can see that the functionality is there if you do want to send out a second reminder. We have these boxes down the bottom: exclude additional reminders for patients with multiple appointments. So if you don't want them to receive multiple messages, you just want to remind them, maybe they're coming in for 2 or 3 appointments on a single day, you don't want to send them multiple reminders for the same day, so you might want to just tick that box so it will just remind them of their first appointment, and then they can come in for that. But again, if you want them to send multiple ones, you can just turn that off. Same as before with our recalls, prompt the user before creating reminders. So at 9 o'clock in the morning, because I've got this ticked, the program will just say, I'm about to generate your appointment reminders. Do you want to let me? We can just choose yes or no. And then, same as with the recalls, we would only want to send those appointment reminders from one computer. So whichever one we're sending them from, always use this PC. Just tick that box, but only tick one computer and not any of the others at the practice. And that's it. It's now automatically going to send us our appointment reminders. So I can OK that and then close that down. And that's it. The program is all set to send out recalls and appointment reminders automatically. So that concludes the tutorial on sending recalls and appointment reminders.